Why is it that 70% of churchgoers are women? Why are women remaining more faithful in going to church and participating in the Christian faith versus men? If you are the same as me, if you've seen the same thing that I have, then what you probably see is that the current generation of men hates church, does not like going to church, with a few exceptions, but by and large, completely checked out of church. The generation before that, so like our fathers, our dads, they really did not like going to church, but they probably forced themselves to because your mom really loved church. And when you were kids, your dad kind of almost begrudgingly went to church. Maybe that wasn't you, but for most guys, that is what they saw growing up. Well, why did that happen? How come there's been just kind of this decline of men being interested in church, wanting to go to church, and now most men go out of a sense of duty, like they have to, rather than something they actually want to participate in? And then on top of that, how come there's two traditions that young men are flocking to right now, and they are not the traditions that have been most popular in America and in the West in general in recent years, in the last few decades? So with that, gentlemen, welcome to the Sons of Strength podcast, episode number 6. I promise this is the last time I will say it too. As formerly known as the Forge live call that we used to have, you guys select the topics. This week, it was within one vote difference between this topic, how the church makes men soft, and another, we'll probably tackle the other topic next week, but how the church makes men soft. So to answer those two questions that I just asked, the answer is very simple. Because the church has become very soft and is producing soft men. And generally, not every single church, but by and large, the church only attracts soft men. Those two traditions that I was talking about, Catholicism and Orthodoxy, do not tend to produce soft men, or at least there's something about those two traditions that are very attractive to men that it seems to make them more repulsed to the other traditions, the evangelical traditions. So I have three little points that I want to make with this, but before I do, let me take my sip of Coke Zero. Let me tell you, Coke Zero is God's gift to mankind. So I'm recording this kind of late. I had a really... I think I hear somebody out my window. Huh. So I had a pretty interesting day. I'm building this fence, and just guys never use Home Depot. Listen, there's some great people that work there, and I haven't had terrible experiences with them all the time. But just don't use Home Depot. Go somewhere else. So I'm a whole day behind on a project now because of Home Depot. But regardless, I've been thinking about this topic for a long time, and it's something that I witnessed with my own dad. My dad was a head of school, and he was a head of Christian school, and he's one of the godliest men I've ever known, and he hated going to church. To this day, it's like pulling teeth to get him to go to church. That doesn't mean he never enjoys it, but my mom has always been just like a racehorse that's pent up, just dying to get out of that pen to do what it was created to do, to run. She wants to get out of that pen and get to church. She just loves church, loves the community, loves getting involved, and it's always been like pulling teeth to get my dad involved. Now, some of that is just temperament for sure. Well, this isn't about him, but the point is, I'm not throwing my dad under the bus. What I'm saying is, my dad is one of the strongest Christian men that I've ever known, and even he just kind of, when it comes to going to church. How come this has happened? And how come the resurgence that we're seeing amongst young men is going to Catholicism and Orthodoxy? Well, and then I guess really what encapsulates all of this is how come men have been very involved in the church for 2,000 years, but in the last basically 50 years, 40 years, specifically the last 30, but really kind of the last 50 years, men have just been dropping like flies out of the church. And now today, 70% of churchgoers are women. Well, there's three distinct differences or three distinct reasons that I have lined out, okay? And so these are all important for you and me to understand. This is not a comprehensive list. I am not sweeping every single church in the West into these categories. We should be smarter than that, but I feel like I need to say that. But if this may resonate with you the way it resonates with me, because I love my church. I love my church. My church is very much a unique church in terms of the makeup of people and the approach that our church takes. Do I agree with every single thing theologically? No, but that's also not super important to us, and that's something that I'll get onto later. But sorry if you heard that swishing around in my mouth. But so I have three reasons. The first one is this. Men do not like the feminized worship that we have in modern church. So modern worship, it emphasizes feelings. And listen, these things aren't bad. Like, think of it like a relationship. We've all either been in a relationship, or we at least, if you haven't been in a relationship or you haven't been married, you at least understand this in principle. And it's that your relationship is not feelings. My marriage to my wife is not feelings. My love for her is not feelings. There are feelings there. I clearly experience feelings when it comes to my wife. She evokes strong feelings. But guys, I have been married to my wife now for 3 years, 3 years, about to say 3.5. So still not quite yet a veteran, but I've been married to my wife for 3 years. We have 2 kids. We have a toddler and right now a 6-week-old, almost 7-week-old son. And guys, every time she walks in the room, I don't feel all of the little like butterflies and all that other type of stuff every time she walks around the corner the way that I did when we were dating or even first married. Does that mean I love her less? No. In fact, I love her now more than I did back then. But if I were to just equate feelings, which is where a lot of people go wrong, and they say, I've fallen out of love. You haven't fallen out of love. You don't feel the little feelies anymore, which could be for a multitude of reasons. But do I feel those sometimes? Yes. When we go on dates and sometimes we just have conversation randomly late at night, I'll be evoked to deep feelings and stuff like that and just tell her things. But guys, my marriage to her is not defined by my feelings. My love for her is not defined by that. And the strength of my relationship to her is not defined by that. So why do we say that it needs to be that way with God? Why do we say that it needs to be that way with worship? Just because you don't go to worship and feel something real strong, you may see people hands way up high. You'll see others down on the floor weeping. Listen, I have been those guys. I've been the guy weeping at the front. I've been the guy at the back with my hands up. I've been the guy dancing around. I've been the guy running around praying over people. I have also been the guy who is waiting for worship to be done so we can get into the Word. Why is this? Well, because your relationship with God is not based upon your feelings. You experience God, yes, the same way I experience my wife, but my relationship to my wife is not defined by me experiencing her. It's defined by the covenant that I have with her. And there's certain things that I do in that covenant. And so it's the same way with God. This is why Scripture uses marriage as the example, by the way, between Christ and the church. He uses this, the example of marriage, because this is how it works. We, as the bride of Christ, this isn't going to be all experience feelings all the time. Sometimes we just need to state things that are true. Sometimes we have duties to do. So most modern worship emphasizes your experience of God. And then you look around and you see people experiencing. They do their emotional experience, I should say. It emphasizes their emotional experience of God. It's not focused on what should I say? It's not focused on the qualities of God per se. It's focusing on experiencing God emotionally. Sometimes you can experience God, oftentimes, you can experience God intellectually. You can worship him with your mind. This is something that Scripture says. Worship God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Notice what that third one is. Or no, second one. Mind, with all your mind. How do you worship God with your mind? You worship him intellectually. What is that? Well, it definitely includes getting into the Word. So if you walk into church one day and you feel nothing during worship and you're just waiting for the Word to be preached, yeah, maybe there's a heart thing going on and it's like, I really need to check myself. I need to try to engage in worship. I might just be hard of heart right now. That does happen, but it might just be that you're wanting to worship God and love him with your mind that morning. And so the worship, to get back to the point, is feminized in the Western church. Guys, for 2,000 years, worship was not... there's one song, good Lord. There's one song that sticks out to me and I can't stand it. It goes, I am a friend of God. I am a friend of God. He calls me friend. That makes me want to gouge my eyes out. I hear some songs that are just very, very, listen, I like Reckless Love. I love Reckless Love. That evokes some things in me. But there's some songs, and you could include Reckless Love in on this, that they're so overly emotional that it makes you think that that's the essence of your relationship with God. And it's not. You need to worship God with honor. You need to worship him with your strength. You need to worship him in doing a damn good job at your job. You need to worship him by taking care of your family if you have one. You need to worship him by preparing for your family, because you're going to have a family. By preparing for your wife, because you're going to have a wife. You need to worship him by sharpening your mind theologically. Learn stuff. Worship him in your masculinity. Worship him with your work. Worship him with your mind. Worship him with your speech. Worship him with your conduct. Stand up straight. Don't let your shoulders slouch. Roll them back. Poke your chest out. Lift weights. Be strong. Be competent. Be at peace with who God made you to be. Don't wish that you were somebody else. And show up with confidence that you are a son of God. That is holy, masculine worship of God. And it is just as valid as those times where we're pulled into those deep emotions. Look at David's Psalms. David had deep, raw, emotional moments with God. But a lot of those Psalms, dude, go read them. Go read them. David worshiped God in strength. So God, yes, he is our safe place. He is our comfort in our home and our fortress. But dude, part of the reason you may not like the worship, which is why so many men have left, because again, for 2,000 years, what we did is we focused on who God is. But part of the reason you may not be able to focus in worship, and I can't, and so many other men can't, and men are leaving the church, is because the worship is geared toward women. It's not geared toward men. I want to hear about God, my King. I want to worship my King. I want to worship my Lord. I want to die for him. I want to talk about how he's going to come back, and Scripture says that blood will fill the streets. Scripture says that he will slaughter all of his enemies. I want to think about Christ conquering the world. I want to imagine evil being crushed by the foot of Christ. I want to sing about that. And I want to sing, this is the last point I have for point number 1. I want to sing in tones that I as a man can sing. Many men don't engage in worship because not only is the lyrical content so soft and overly emotional. I'm getting going so much now, I got to drink my drink. Not only are the lyrics so overly emotional and focused on Jesus being our boyfriend type of lyrics, but the octaves themselves, the key that it's sung in is so high, it's uncomfortable for men. It's uncomfortable. This morning I was actually, so I woke up really early, and it's not even light outside, and I'm loading stuff into my truck, and I'm driving down the road. My CarPlay, for some reason, wasn't working. It finally works, but because it stopped working and reworked, it turned my radio on. And the radio was playing, I wish I could remember, but it was playing some worship song that, listen, I know my heart was not completely in the right place. Like, I was kind of grumpy when I woke up this morning. And I know a lot of people love that worship song, and that's great. And I shouldn't, just crap all over it. But here's what I can tell you. As for me, and I speak for a lot of men, I heard the song and I went, oh my gosh, no. And so I go to CarPlay and I immediately start blasting Kubla Khan. Now, Kubla Khan, you don't want to listen to them if you don't like super heavy music. It's like, that's what I needed to hear. And so we worship God too effeminately. And so men are uncomfortable with worship. Okay, that's just worship. What else? Why else have men, oh man, I'm so sorry, guys. Brief tag back. The way that this makes men soft is it makes guys like me, guys like you, feel like that we have to experience God emotionally, and that if we're not, something's wrong. So we work this muscle of leaning in emotionally and thinking that's the essence of our relationship with the Lord, or that it's like this. And it is important, obviously. We do need to lean in from time to time, but we lean in as we feel led. Whenever we feel like, okay, I'm being a little calloused right now, I need to lean in. But to think that the essence of it is leaning in emotionally and breaking down in tears and all that other type of stuff, the whole 9 yards, and singing Jesus is my boyfriend lyrics, to think that that is worship for a man is just wrong. It's just wrong. And so when you have to and you force yourself to lean in, guys, I'm telling you, I've seen it a million times. I've seen it in myself. You end up with a man who is captivated by his emotions. He's captivated by his sentiments. And emotions are not good or bad. I'm not saying we should shut them out, not in any way, shape, or form. But we can lean too far into that, and we're just not geared for that. We're not. So, number 2 of 3, feminized theology. This is very important. This has been more of a subject of conversation than probably the first point in recent years, but it's feminized theology. So this is not as common in Protestant circles. It's very common in evangelical. I choose to make that distinction because Protestants, that comes out of the Protestant Reformation. So in my view, you've got to be Methodist, Dutch Reformed. I wouldn't honestly even wrap in Southern Baptist, but I guess you could if you're Reformed Baptist. But that's what I would consider Protestant, something that's birthed out of the Protestant Reformation. Evangelical is your non-denominational, typically your non-denominational, even though they're more Baptist in theology. But yeah, so kind of your Baptists, but it's specifically your non-denominational evangelical churches. This is very common in these circles. Why? Because they're not rooted in history. So evangelicalism specifically, it rejects patriarchal teaching, and it instead presents this idea of mutual submission. I've talked about this before, but here's the gist. Church history is very clear, and Scripture is very clear. God made men to work the earth, but that's an overly simplistic thing. The point is, God made men to accomplish missions, and then God made women to help men accomplish the missions. This doesn't mean that women can't have their own missions, but what it does mean is that the man's primary purpose is to follow God and accomplish a mission that God has given him for life. And the woman's primary job is to fall in line, fall under the mission of a man and help him in it. A man will never be able to be as successful as he can without his wife, and a wife will never be able to feel fully fulfilled in her purpose without helping her husband in his calling. How do I know this? Because that's exactly what Scripture says, and Paul says this concretely. He says that he points all the way back to creation when talking about these things and says that man was made first and then the woman. He then also says, for man was not deceived, but woman was deceived. Man was not tricked by the serpent. Woman was tricked. Sin did not enter through man being deceived, but through woman being deceived. But yet who's held accountable? Adam. Why? Because Scripture's clear. The man is ultimately responsible. You are ultimately responsible. So when you have evangelical churches that are so scared because we're in the middle of fourth wave feminism. Actually, we're probably on the tail end of fourth wave. If you want to say fifth wave feminism, I don't know what that looks like yet. Again, I think we're still at the tail end of the fourth wave. But you had first wave feminism, which was, hey, give us the right to vote. And to be honest, if you want to talk about how a country needs to be run, a lot of people shouldn't be voting, and that includes women. Women should not be voting. This is my humble opinion. I'm going to lose a lot of people on this. But women should not be voting unless they are widows with children, because that makes them the head of the house. Single unmarried men should not be voting. I'm going to get myself in trouble, but honestly, I don't even care. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But the point that I'm making with that is, let me seize on that. Let me seize on that. Did that just evoke something in you? Because I know it's edgy. You know, it's edgy and it makes it sound like, oh, you're just being dogmatic. Does that make you uncomfortable to say, no, women should not be voting unless they're a widow with children, because then she's now the head of the house? Does it make you uncomfortable for me to say that single unmarried men, I guess unmarried would be single, but single unmarried men should not be able to vote either? Does that make you uncomfortable? Did you know that that has been the case for all of human history? All of human history until the 1920s. All of human history, they were all like, oh yeah, no. Women shouldn't be able to vote, and a lot of men shouldn't be able to vote. You shouldn't be able to vote until you have skin in the game, was the idea. Now, I'm not saying, oh, we should go back to blah, 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 or that there's no argument to be made. All I'm saying is if you have a perfectly structured society, the only people who should be voting are people who have the best interest of the future of the country in mind and are equipped to think in that manner. And sorry, guys, speaking as a former single unmarried guy, I should not have been voting. I should not have been voting. Now that I'm married with kids, I'm like, oh, that's why I should give a crap about all these issues. Why? Because I have children who are going to grow up in the world that I'm creating right now. But if that evokes something in you, guess what that means? That means that you have been deeply trained and ingrained with soft feminism. Oh, yeah, no, I believe, cross the arms like this. Oh, no, I believe women should vote and we should give them that right. Brother, you're cucking to first wave feminism. And I hate to use that terminology, to be honest. I don't want to be too grotesque on this show, or on this podcast, rather, but it's true. We all know this. You know this. You know this intuitively. So let's be courageous and let's just start speaking plainly about this. Now listen, my wife voted last election and she's going to vote in the next one. Why? Because if there's other women out there voting, my wife dang sure is going to vote. She's going to go out there and she's going to cancel out those other votes. But regardless, moving on from that, our theology's feminized. So Scripture clearly orders creation. Adam had a mission before Eve. Christ is the head of the church. Scripture says concretely man is the head of the wife. When men are told to be gentle without strength, they lose conviction and they lose authority. You were called to lead. This is not about power. This is not about abuse. This is not about feeling in control. It's about responsibility. If you and your girl are deciding whether you should go to the park and you say, I think it's going to rain. And she goes, no, I don't think it will. And you say, I think it's going to rain. And she really starts pushing. And then you go, okay, fine, we'll go. And then you go and it starts raining. Guess what? You better not look at her and said, I told you it was going to rain. Nope. That's you being Adam. You're being Adam. You're looking at her and you're blaming her the same way that Adam blamed Eve in the garden. Why? It's your responsibility. If you really felt that it was going to rain and you really thought, you know what, we really shouldn't go, and then she really insists that you should, when you give in, guess what you're doing, bro? You're making her the head. Now, this doesn't mean if your wife makes a really good point or your girl makes a really good point and you're like, you know what, that's actually a really good point, and you listen to your wise counsel. That's why feminism. That's why wisdom in Scripture is referred to as a woman, because the man who shuts out the voice of his wife is the type of man who shuts out wisdom itself. You should listen to your wife, but if she gives you advice and you listen to it, that's not the same. But for you to violate what you know is actually correct because you don't want to make your wife upset is you abdicating. You are abdicating your responsibility and you're letting her fill the role that you're supposed to do. So in that scenario, you go, you're right. Or you don't say you're right. You go, I'm sorry. I really felt like it was going to rain and I brought us out here anyway. I'm sorry. We shouldn't have done this. This is on me. That's masculine responsibility. This is the reason why in our culture, by the way, we try to push that women are just as, fill in the blank as men, but yet in any situation where there's a man and a woman and something goes wrong, what does the culture do? It always blames the man. If you have a woman who is drunk and a man sleeps with her, the culture blames the man. It doesn't blame the woman for, and by the way, I'm not saying if she's passed out or something. I'm saying she gives her consent and they're drinking and so on and so forth. And then she wakes up the next morning and regrets it and goes, well, you should have not taken my yes for a yes because I was drunk. Our culture starts blaming the man. Why? Because you can't get past it. We all innately know this. We all innately know men are ultimately responsible. And yeah, that guy shouldn't. He should go, she's drunk. She can't make this decision. But in our culture, we tell men, you don't have responsibility. Our theology is feminized. It's feminized. It's been impacted by feminism. And so it teaches that men are no longer the head. It teaches that men are not the head of their family, that men are not the head of the church. We get super, Christ is the head of the church, but we get super wound up, get our panties in a wad whenever, some people do, maybe not necessarily us, but they get their panties in a wad whenever we just simply believe and teach what Paul said. And that's that, men are the only ones who can be pastors. Women can't be pastors. Men can be elders. Women can't be elders. And he does the same thing. His reasoning is he points back to creation. When we deny these things, we mess up the creation order. And when we mess up the creation order, all you get is chaos. Our theology is feminine. Lastly, and I'm going to make this one quick. This one kind of ties into the first two, but it is important. Our church culture is feminized. So, as a reminder, the first one is that our worship is feminized. Second is our theology is feminized. And third is that our church culture is feminized. Churches highly cater to women and children, and they just sideline the men. Think about church. You got programs for women out the wazoo to flourish, and men get like a men's breakfast once a year. And men's breakfast, that's not even what men want to go do. I don't want to go to a men's breakfast. I don't want to do that. And so what's the result? The men disengage, they abdicate, or they just completely leave entirely. Why? There's no mission. There's no call to battle. There's no space for strength. Instead, what do? Our feminized church culture takes the programs that are designed for women, like retreats. There's freaking 50 million women's retreats. You make a men's retreat and there's 5 people signed up and all 5 work at the church. And you have to really push men to do it. They do men's breakfast, which is what? It's brunch for men. What we do is we try to take the things that are designed for women and then we try to make it masculine. We try to kind of hype it up. Like if you add like guns or like we call it like the beef eating breakfast or just like we think that it's our messaging and the way that we pitch things when reality is it is a fundamental problem. Men don't generally want to sit around in a circle and talk on a Tuesday morning or a Saturday morning, especially not a Saturday morning. Heck no, I've been working all week. I do not want to wake up on a Saturday and go sit in a circle and have a therapy session, an open therapy session. Now listen, I love having conversation. I love having open dialogue. I love sitting around in a circle chopping it up with the boys. Even a focused like Bible study or something like that. But the reason that men aren't doing anything is because, guys, there's no mission. What's my job? Tell me to go do something. Just tell me, hey, men of the church, there are 3 houses on Negra Arroyo Lane. I got that from Breaking Bad. I saw a clip from it earlier. And we need to go over there, and all 3 of them are owned by widows. We're going to go over there. We're going to clean up their lawn. We're going to redo the siding on one side of the house for one of them. We're going to move some furniture for the second one, and then the third one, we're gonna clean out our garage. Dude, all the men freaking show up. And if we all show up, it'll get done in like 2 hours. But you tell men, yeah, we're going to go sit in a circle and talk. Dude, come on. How many of us are going to show up? If you're like me, you'll show up a couple times, but you don't really want to go. You're going as a duty. And sometimes you do need to go and talk. But for the most part, it's not how we're wired. Where's the mission? What am I supposed to do? So we abdicate. We leave. We need something. And a lot of pastors hear this and they're like, okay, so how can we mobilize the men? And they try to do it with like, well, you can pass out communion and you can hand out name tags and you can hold open doors. Come on. What are we, kids? That's the job you give children. I want to change things. I want to change the culture. I want to change my community. I want to freaking go and do something for the kingdom. I want to represent my king in public all the time. That's what I want to do. What mountain are we moving today, gentlemen? Scripture says the glory of a young man is his strength. And the longer that churches keep telling men to sit in circles and talk about how we feel about the Bible and about stuff like that, rather than sending us on freaking missions, we will continue to miss it. So we are feminized in our church culture. We are feminized in our theology. And we are feminized in our music. And if we can take back all 3 of those things and do what the church was doing for 2,000 years until 40 years ago, we decided to screw it all up because we felt we were so enlightened that we could throw away all of that history. Until we go back to it, it's not going to get any better. Again, like I said at the beginning, this is why young men are fleeing to Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Is because for both of them, both churches, specifically Orthodoxy, which I've been fascinated with lately, but I have a whole host of things, of issues, but that notwithstanding, why are they going to Orthodoxy? Because Orthodoxy says, oh, you need to fast. Yeah, there's actually things that you need to do. We're fasting the next 7 days, and it's going to suck. Do it. This is good for your spiritual health. You need to practice humility. You need to go and do these things. Now, the problem is specifically Catholicism, it ties it to your salvation often, but we need church with purpose, with missions, with history, with awe, with reverence, with lordship, with kingship, and with the proper biblical implementation of patriarchy, God's design. And I think we're seeing a return to a lot of those things, hopefully all of them. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do know that I'm not the only one who sees these things. So this went longer than I anticipated, guys. I'm very sorry when I go a little longer than I should. Kind of ranted a little bit on some of those, but you know what? I don't regret it because it's very important. So thank you guys for tuning in to episode number 6 of the Sons of Strength podcast. Vote next week. I'll be putting out the poll on Sunday. Make sure to vote, and I'll see you guys in the community. For those who are not members, hop into our school. You can join. It's $9 a month. You got a ton of resources there. Plus, you get to join a brotherhood of 45 men. So hop on into Sons of Strength, and let's start building and better ourselves, gentlemen.